So now it's time for our sermon. Helen Anderson is here. She has a diverse background, interesting past, and her current role is the Chief Officer at Hello Care, a home care agency serving Yamhill County.
Thank you for having me here today. I have a Henry that's a freshman in college as well. Henry Anderson, so he's in Missouri, so I'm not going to be driving to see him. Oh, sorry, Brenda, that was amazing. Thanks for having me here. I know some of you from different roles that we've had in the community together, and I'm just so impressed with this group, and I'm so honored to have been invited to come and talk to you here today. I've been an RN here in McMinnville for about 20 years, but I grew up in Sheridan, out in Gopher Valley. So my gift is to be able to care for the people in this community that I've known growing up my entire life. So I have chosen as my career to work in gerontology. I have my RN, I graduated from Schmecketa, but then I went back and got my master's in nursing education, and then further certified in gerontology nursing. So I'm really interested in aging, not only from the scientific perspective and what's the research tell us, but just from the philosophical perspective of how do we age? What does our culture tell us about aging here, and what do other cultures kind of teach their people about what aging is? And there's a wonderful book that a lot of us have probably read, Tuesdays with Maury, and one of the chapters is about aging. And as Maury Swartz is succumbing to ALS, he's doing interviews with his former student, and he says that the young are not wise, and they have very little understanding of life. Embrace aging as you grow, because you learn more. Aging is not just decay, it's growth. With a fulfilled life, you don't envy the young, you don't look back, you look forward, seeing more and doing more. You can't wait until 65. If you're always battling against getting older, you'll always be unhappy, because it's going to happen anyway. So I'm going to share with you some of the latest research about aging and independence, doing that well and in your home, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the culture and the philosophy of aging. So 9 out of 10 of us will need some help in our homes before the end of our lives. And we're going to use kind of unfiltered language here today as we talk about aging and navigating care for ourselves and our loved ones as we near the end of our lives. And it sounds like you just had an experience with that. So I'm going to conclude with a short kind of story that I wrote about how people endure aging, and how often there's loneliness involved in that. And then I guess we're going to have time for discussion, which I welcome. So we're going to talk about the 3 groups that seniors oftentimes lean on for care as they age. The first resource is usually the family. Family encompasses the spouse, adult children, and siblings. We're going to get into community, but when I talk about family, I mean people that are related to each other. With married couples, people usually care for each other, but not always. I've seen married couples that are very strong and seem like they're going to age really well together, but caregiving is not a natural kind of an instinct for everybody. There are some people that want to be there right at the person's side as they age and even during the dying process. But some families and some spouses even tell me, I want to remember them as they were. I don't want to be at the bedside with them. And so in those situations, we oftentimes come in with private help. I think it's healthy to know that your strengths, where your strengths lie. If they're in organization and management, they may not be in hand-holding with someone at the end of their life. I was with someone the other day as they were explaining the story of a death that happened with a friend, and they thought the hospice nurse just explained way too much. They didn't want to know everything that was happening in the body and the changes that were happening in the body. But the hospice nurse did not stop and ask the question, do you want to know about these things? Do you want the dying process to be narrated for you, or do you want to just sit quietly with the person? And so I think those are all important things for us as those that are kind of managing the care of people as they approach the end of their lives, is understanding how each person wants to be involved in the process. I think about the beginning of life and the end of life as having a lot of similarities, because the person that is born and the person that is dying is not the one that's going to tell the story. It's going to be the witnesses. And it's important, I think, in both of those situations, that people come out of those situations with the stories, that things went well, that pain was managed, that people understood what was happening. We talk about having a good death, and to me, that means that one with anticipatory guidance, symptom management, and hands-on care. And you could kind of see the similarities with the beginning of life there as well, right? Because the end is very similar. And ushering out of one state of being and into the next. And I've witnessed that those losses can be easier to bear. I think when people tell a positive story, and one that has a certain amount of peace and acceptance to it. So as we age, we typically change from people that are giving care to people that start to receive care. And that transition can be difficult for different people. I go back to my Elizabeth Kubler-Ross book, Death and Dying, when she talks about the 5 stages of grief. How your grief doesn't always have to be the loss of a person or a loss of a thing. Sometimes it's the loss of an idea or the loss of an identity, of being a caregiver, being a caretaker, and moving into a care receiving role. There can be grief with that as well. And as you know, our first stage is always denial. I don't need help, I don't need that, I don't need this. That is a normal process that we witness and we watch, and we kind of continue to be there for that person. So I like to not share too many of my own feelings, but this is one thing that I just kind of wanted to share. Is something that I see a lot of families struggle with, that I won't be relying on my own children for care. I think one of the hardest promises I see families struggling to fulfill is, promise you won't put me in a home. And like we talked about, there's people I think that are natural caregivers, that this is a great role for them, it feels really natural, but you can't really know that, what you're asking of someone when you say, promise you'll care for me 24/7 until the end of my life. There are circumstances that may arise, dementia, aggressive behaviors, bedbound status that can last for years. If my children have their own children and their careers, do I want to ask them to give up everything for me in their prime of their life? And we all need to answer those questions for ourselves, and our children needs to answer those questions for ourselves. So the next resource that I'm sharing with you is the community, and this community seems like you have a lot of things figured out in terms of supporting each other. I think churches like the UU are rich with people that want to invest in relationships in their community. I was one of the nurses at McMinnville Free Clinic when we had it over at First Baptist Church, and we had a wonderful clinic coordinator there. Her name was Mary Hill, and she was the parish nurse for the Covenant Church over on 2nd Street. And that was how she gave back to her community. And after she retired, was she continued to kind of help people as they navigated care as they aged in her congregation. So my favorite thing to do when I go into a home is to witness the community that supports that person in their home. Sometimes someone will come in to feed the cat. Someone will come in to bring a hot meal, and other times people just come in to check on that person. When I see the support system that they have in their community, it gives me a lot of confidence that that person is going to be able to age in place in their homes. There's a group called the Village to Village Network that is a nationwide group. There's 10 of these groups in Portland, and it's a a nonprofit, but it's a group of people that give their time, they volunteer to transport people to appointments or to make meals and give money. And that is kind of a way that non-denominational communities, I think, have kind of made a church for themselves. And some of these communities that they're investing in that people know are going to be there for them when they need it. And sometimes just checking on each other. Another resource that's newer to the world right now is technology. And a lot of people are using technology to age safely in their homes. And so what does that look like? It's kind of interesting, and I have the benefit of traveling and hearing a lot of different of the newer kind of systems that are out there. One thing that kind of came up recently was when Gene Hackman died in his home, if we remember that. So his wife was his caregiver, and his wife passed away suddenly. And because of his advanced dementia, he perished as well. And after that happened, there was a lot of questioning, what if that happened to me? What if someone that cared for me passed away suddenly and I'm dependent? Or what if I was the person that passed away suddenly? Who would know that that had happened to me? So there's systems out there, and I'll share them with you if anybody's interested, but they can be as invasive as cameras and speakers, and as non-invasive as just a sensor that says someone is in the kitchen or someone's in the bathroom or not. And sometimes I talk to families about using these in hybrid kind of situations. So for example, I have a family that the mom is here in McMinnville, the daughter is in Florida. She calls her every morning at 9 a.m. to remind her to take her pills. Well, one morning the mom didn't answer the phone at 9 a.m. and the daughter was in a panic. What do I do? She called us and we went over to check. Turns out she was fine. She just didn't sleep well the night before and she wasn't up to answer the phone. But in those situations, sometimes I'll say, well, you can have a camera, maybe, that you only turn on when you need to see that everything's okay. So there's ways that we can be really creative with helping people age in their homes, age in place, keep their privacy, but also have that emergency system just in case. The last group that people tap into for hands-on care is typically the paid caregiving community. So that's what we do. I have a team of about 130 people, and we go into homes from Portland Metro all the way to the beach and help people as they want to stay in their homes. So the decision to bring in paid care, I think, can be easy or it can be agonizing. So for some families, again, they want to handle everything within their own family community, but that's not always possible when needs change. And also we know that the economic realities of having a 2-income family sometimes is what people need to do, and so that being at home and being able to dedicate the time to care for someone may not be possible for some families. So there's pluses and minuses to private care. One is that I really like, my family is on care service with us, and what I love is that someone comes in and gives my father-in-law a shower once a week on schedule and cleans their home and drives them to their appointments. And what that does is that frees me up to be more available for different situations. So my father-in-law about 20 years ago had a major stroke, so he can no longer walk, he can no longer talk, and they want to live in their homes, and I support that. But sometimes when you have a busy family and different, busy jobs, you feel like you're letting that person down a lot because you're not there as much as you like to be. So bringing in someone that is scheduled to be there, that is their person, that is there for 3 to 6 hours a week, can be a real comfort, not only to the family that's receiving the care, but to the adult children. So what I've noticed is that aging and all the medical appointments and management that goes along with that can sometimes be overwhelming. When I go to doctor's appointments with my mother-in-law, every one seems to lead to 3 more. Yes. So she has, needs a test, needs to be EKG, but then she needs to come back for the EKG, and then she needs the EKG read, and then they need to have another appointment for the follow-up. So I sympathize with her about how busy it is just to keep up with all of her medical care. And so to have someone that can be there for her, that can drive her to those appointments when I can just come in and be on the management side. When I think about aging in place and everything that I research and talk about, if you want to age in place, typically maintaining independence is going to be key to that. And we're lucky to live in a world right now where there's robust research about how to do that and give yourself the best chances and reducing the risks to losing your independence. I will say that the research really points to a certain activity level with our lives, but there are people that do all those things, that do all the activities and all the brain games and all the socialization that still do end up with a dementia diagnosis. So it is really the interaction of our genetics with the environment that creates the results. And sometimes our genetics deal us a bum hand, and that's just how it is sometimes, no matter what we do. But maintaining health is the key to keeping your options open where you age. So estimates about how many of us will have dementia as we age, for men it's about 10%, for women it's a little closer to 20%, and that's just a result of us living more years. So, and the result of cognitive changes is that usually the body can be pretty healthy, but the brain changes to something that it wasn't what it was before. And the fear about coming down with dementia, I think, is really a real one, and it's for all of us. And I have 3 sort of criteria that I kind of use for my screening that usually gets us to, is this normal aging or is this something to be concerned about? And they all focus on change. So the first one that I always want to ask is the person getting lost in a familiar environment? So you've been to the same Winco for years, you've been to the same PMC appointments for years, you take your dog to the same vet. You've never gotten lost there or back, but now you do. So that's a change. The second one is kind of adulting tasks. So if people are typically great at paying their bills and keeping their appointments straight, in this really complicated world that we live in, if they were doing that really well and staying on top of things and now they're not, then that's a change. And the third one that I really look at when I'm comparing normal aging to could this be something that needs follow-up, is our relationships. So are the people around you noticing that you're struggling? And our people around us, our friends and family, are usually pretty tuned in to how we're doing. And if our family is noticing that things are changing and things that used to be easy and come really smoothly for you aren't happening that way anymore, then those are good people to listen to. So there was just some really great research that came out from the Alzheimer's Association that shared some really good news with us about how to maintain our brain health as we age. And they were really centered around activity, socialization, nutrition. Those are the big ones. And so when they compared 2 groups, they had the same interventions, but one group had very high accountability and structure and encouragement, and the other group was really accountable just to themselves. Low structure, low intensity. And what they found was the group that had the most structure, that the most adherence to the kind of the Mediterranean diet, plus resistance training, plus socialization, that group maintained and even turned back the clock on brain health. Mm-hmm. So what that kind of encourages me to think about is that we're capable of so much more than we think we are, and challenging ourselves with activity and with continuing to be involved in our community does show results as something that can help us maintain our independence as we get older. So going to No King's Rally and being there on your feet and socializing and having all of those engaging, exciting things. Those are the things that are going to help keep us aging in place. Because aging in place is really about maintaining your health, your independence, and your strength. Okay. So from my nursing perspective, if people talk to me about someone that they're concerned about is having changes with their cognition, there's 5 things, again, that I look at. So this is my nursing brain, right? It's always going to these assessments. I like to look at things that are potentially reversible, things that look like dementia, but they're actually not, things that we can change. So the first thing that's easy to look at is hearing loss. So sometimes hearing loss or a hearing aid that doesn't work correctly can mimic dementia. It's because the social isolation that usually comes from hearing loss, and that it's a lot of effort for people sometimes that are hard of hearing to socialize. So that becomes a risk factor for a dementia diagnosis that actually doesn't exist. So if you're seeing changes in yourself or others, get that hearing tested. The other is depression that's left untreated. Again, that mimics that withdrawal into themselves, that slowing of the brain and the body that is a result of untreated mental health problems. And once that condition is treated, oftentimes those symptoms reverse. Chronic pain, or pain that's treated with narcotics. So chronic pain can again make people kind of come back into themselves, can result in depression. So we want to get to the root cause of what's actually happening to change this person's behavior. What about poor sleep? This is a big one. So a lot of older adults have a poor sleep-wake cycle. So they also can be woken up very easily. And so little things can cause older adults to have really broken up sleep. And that results in a reduced amount of restorative sleep. And then we have this kind of confusion and slowness during the day. So if you can imagine how we feel after a night of not having great sleep, and then you put that together for months and months, possibly even years, and we get a confusion that can look like dementia. But if the CPAP is put in place and some different things like that, then sleep gets better. And then medication side effects is another one. So if you're starting a medication and you say, oh my gosh, I'm angry all the time, I'm tired all the time, I'm having these different changes, talk to your doctor. Don't accept that as being something that now I'm just like this all the time now. Talk to your doctor, there can be adjustments. So I hope that those are really helpful tips for you. Again, we want to look at what are reversible changes in cognition, and if we can change those things, to be really proactive in doing that and talking to your doctor about that. And I want to finish up on an idea about endure. How do we endure? And this is something I wrote not too long ago as I was thinking about the different phases that we have in our lives, the different chapters in our lives, and how some of them are filled with people and filled with activity, and that if they're, for some people, aging can be a really lonely time in their life. And old age can be a lonely time. So my philosophy on my role as a nurse, and what I've learned through supporting others as they endure getting older, aging, pain, suffering, loss, illness, and death, is that this is really serious work, but we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. Recently, standing in the living room of a gentleman on hospice, we marveled at the lovely yellow color of a urine sample as the sun shone through the window. And the 3 of us present did confirm that this gentleman did in fact make beautiful urine. So I think humor is one of the tools we use to endure. Using a disclaimer that all of these observations are my own, and I'm always open to hearing the observations of others, I observed that the ability to endure is not static throughout the lifespan. It is dependent on many factors. We endure for each other, for love, for purpose, and for connection, and even for spite and to prove the doctor wrong. I've witnessed people forgoing pain medication to be lucid for visitors, prioritizing the short time left for friends over their own comfort. I've also spoken with others in their right mind that are simply ready to move on. As a right to die state, people have those options here, and we have assisted people through that process. When someone tells me I'm ready to die, I'm ready to be with my husband, I accept it as a true statement. There's no question or argument, no statement from me of don't say that, or what about your son or daughter, or your grandchildren would miss you. To argue with that statement is not compassionate or therapeutic. Instead, I say, tell me about your husband. And this will be a compilation of many answers, but she might say, he worked at the cannery in Dayton. That's where we met. He was the foreman and he was a hard worker. He loved my peach cobbler and fried chicken. We sat on this porch together in the summer. Did you know we were married for 70 wonderful years? She's ready to die when Jesus calls her, and she is excited to see her loved ones again. She is not expressing any desire to die, just that she will accept it when it happens without sadness or fight. And she is enduring now, facing the reality of aging alone. And I would like to close on this quote on living and dying from the Dalai Lama. Analysis of death is not for the sake of becoming fearful, but to appreciate this precious lifetime. Thank you.
We're going to skip the meditation.
Okay.